Columbia Pool. All right, I had to agree to recording. Ad hoc Columbia Pool, Save Columbia Pool Coalition, which we're in the process of renaming in order to reflect our broader concern about preserving uninterrupted access to year-round aquatics on the North Portland Peninsula. Our coalition has included multiple organizations and now has a mailing list of approximately 1,500 people that we built through tireless community outreach, attending PTA and other community meetings, standing outside the pool, going to community events, and most of all, identifying affinity groups for the pool and meeting them where they were. And I think, as most of you know, Columbia Pool was recently closed indefinitely on the eve of reopening after our pandemic closure. The response, as you probably know, was done in, the closure was done in response to a facilities inspection, but it follows a pattern of sudden traumatizing communications to the community about the pool, which I'd sum up as no news at all, followed by bad news. We now anticipate the pool will be closed for a considerable amount of time, whether or not repairs are made to that facility. And so my ask for you all today is that you urge park staff to be immediately begin strong engagement to the community served by Columbia Pool. I think they can ask now, without knowing what comes next, what are the community needs and how else can those needs be met in the short and long term? I've been told that some of this work will begin in the winter, but the pool is closed now and has been for quite some time. There's work going on now that we would be happy to connect with park staff around. There's a community partnership with the University of Portland to collect community stories. There's multiple people, organizations, and groups who are really ready to start asking some questions and answering questions about how can we creatively serve the needs that Columbia Pool served. As advocates, we've done a lot of community outreach over the last couple of years, and I don't expect park staff to be as motivated as we are, but I do expect a lot more. I saw I was looking at notes from a meeting of the Parks Levy Oversight Committee that community outreach is a priority there. I think that's fantastic, and I hope that some of that attitude and approach translates over to work on the pool. Swimming supporters voted for that levy. And when we first began all this, we understood that Parks was facing massive layoffs, real capacity issues, but you've got a little more capacity now. And I think some of them are frankly just kind of tired of doing stuff that we really wish trained people with maybe some cultural competencies that we don't have would come out and help us do some of this community outreach and engagement. Now's the time to do it. You may not be able to open Columbia Pool anytime soon, but by doing that engagement, you can offer some hope, a sense that the city cares, that there are people who are looking into solutions, and that we have some input and control over what comes next. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and thank you again for your service. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mary Margaret. I have to completely agree with you. I think that engaging with the community to understand the needs and ensure that whether it's a repaired Columbia Pool or a new pool, which there is definitely some due diligence being conducted there. I don't know the degree to which I myself was asking staff about that as well. So I'm really glad to hear you bringing it up and continuing to advocate for the aquatics needs in North Portland. So thank you for coming. Did any member of staff want to comment quickly in response to Mary Margaret before we dive into our regular agenda, please? No. Okay.
Lauren's got her hand up.
Oh, Lauren, I'm sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
Hi, Bonnie. We are happy to give you an overview of what we've been doing so far on Columbia Pool at the Land Use Subcommittee, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be great if Patty, you chair that committee. Do you think that that's an appropriate spot for it?
Yes, indeed, I think it is. We have discussed it somewhat, but there's clearly a great deal more detail to be dug into, so we can certainly do that.
And Bonnie, I
Great.
would suggest we might want to ask either maybe have Tim join that group because he's been doing the comms and will be overseeing community engagement for future conversations around pool. So maybe Tim gets invited to that particular land use meeting.
Great, thank you. Patty, can we make sure that Tim is included?
Indeed, we
when-
should.
If that makes it onto our agenda?
Indeed, we can. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Margaret, for your continued advocacy. Okay. All right, so thank you. With that, I'd like to turn our attention to the agenda that you received. One thing that isn't on the agenda that we did send out to the board that I just want to quickly call folks' attention to is the report that we provide to City Council. There was a written report that we sent out, and we wanted to welcome anybody's comment on that. If you felt that it didn't reflect what we're doing, we definitely want to make changes to that. But other than that, will be just a very brief agenda item on a City Council meeting at an upcoming meeting that Brooke schedules, that either I or Casey will deliver, depending on when it's scheduled. But if folks could take a look at that, we'd really appreciate it. With that, were there any comments on today's agenda before we dive in? Okay, hearing none. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the August minutes. I hope folks had a chance to take a look at those. And we will, if there's any comments or changes or corrections to that, welcome that at this time.
I would move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Thank you, Patty.
I'll
Is
second.
there a second? Thank you, Casey. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carries. Okay, with that, oh, I didn't do an icebreaker. Sorry, guys, I did not do an icebreaker. I'm just zipping along here. All right, so for icebreaker, I was actually very inspired by the internal reports that we got. I love the youth conservation videos and whatnot. I don't know if people had a chance to take a look at those, but I started thinking about the invasive species and things like that. And Casey suggested for an icebreaker, I thought this was a good one, but maybe a little bit too ambitious for me. If anybody had any summer goals that they didn't, parks related summer goals that they didn't achieve yet, didn't check off their boxes, and that they might go into fall. But again, I was still stuck on the youth conservation core. And I was thinking about, one of my very favorite late summer, early fall activities is to look for wild blackberries, which I know some versions are invasive, but I still love to hunt and pick wild blackberries. So that's kind of my late summer fall activity I love to do. So let's go around and hear what everybody else has either on their agenda, their to-do list, or things that they maybe have just done recently as the end of summer, beginning of fall starts up. And while people are thinking, I'll call on Casey because he's a good sport.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. What I haven't been able to do yet, but I'm looking forward to doing after the first rains come, is to start taking some more ivy out. It really helps after you get a couple of weeks of rain in there, so it's a lot easier to pull and roll. But as soon as we get a couple of weeks of rain, I'm definitely going to get out there and get dirty.
I guess you were inspired by the Youth Conservation Corps as well. Brooke, how about you?
Hi, folks. I'm trying to think. I got out and I wish I did more hiking, but I feel like that's a year-round thing. I'd love to do. I moved in the spring and have a yard now, and I did some gardening at the beginning of summer, but I'd like to do a little bit more work to be done for sure. So I think that's pretty much it. You know, I tried paddleboarding last summer. I didn't get around to it this summer, so I'm just gonna be keeping that in mind for next year when things warm up again.
Thank you, Brooke. Allie, how about you?
Like Casey, I'm also really looking forward to the rains coming back because it's mushroom season. I'm not a forager. I just really like the diversity of life of mushrooms, and I like to do macro photography on different mushrooms and Markham Nature Park or Palo Butte. There's a lot of really great parks in Portland that have really great mushrooms, so that makes me happy.
Thank you, Allie. Corbin, what do you have on your agenda?
I'm going to continue visiting as many parks as possible and kind of like seeking out their individual, I guess, characteristics and maybe picking a favorite park eventually.
Thank you. Mike, what you've got going on?
So we're working towards certification for the backyard bird habitat. And every time I plant a new native species, it gets eaten by rabbits or chipmunks. So hopefully going to make progress on that. And we have one giant holly bush I need to pull out. So if anybody wants to volunteer to help with that, just let me know.
Thank you for the volunteer opportunity, Mike. Randy.
Well, I was going to talk about this in my PPF update, but I'll throw it out now so you all can chew on it. But I've been wanting to get around to some parks I haven't seen in a while or at all to think about what our next round of parks posters will be. So Corbin, as you're exploring, send me ideas, and everybody else, send me ideas as well. We're going to probably do another set of 4. And we want to get out to the farther reaches of the city. So that's what I'm going to be up to.
Thanks, Randy. Erin.
Well, I had something relevant to share, but then there was a talk about things eating plants, and it just reminded me recently my 2.5-year-old has started calling all squirrels Mr. Peanuts. So she says, "There's a Mr. Peanuts." I just thought I'd share that because it's pretty funny.
Thank you, Erin. Alejandro.
Well, I was hoping this summer to try to get to become more familiar with all the bike trails in Palo Butte, but my wife just had a baby, so I don't have much free time right now. So I'm hoping by the end of next summer I'll be able to achieve that goal.
So your to-do list is sleeping. Gotcha. Nova.
Yes. Well, it's always going to be taking advantage of as many days where we can see baseball games out of the park. So we were out at Westmoreland last weekend with some fall ball, which is fun, and a beautiful field. There's so many fields that have just beautiful tree line backdrops, which don't see everywhere. But then also, I live right by Arbor Lodge Park, and my husband and I have been doing some nightly walks where we just loop. It's not a big walk, but we just loop as many times as we feel like we have energy for, and that's been nice just to get out there. So we're going to try to do that more before the weather turns.
Perfect. Tanya.
To jump off of mute. So my upcoming activities in the parks include coaching soccer in some of the fields around town. I have another child that's playing fall ball, softball, so also enjoying the fields that way, and walking our dogs mostly up Mount Tabor. We have plenty of fall activities, leaf pickup and gutter cleaning to do at home, especially before the rains come this weekend.
Thank you, Tanya. Adrian, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm looking to still climb Tippecanoe Point, but I try to do it every year. and tomorrow might be the last open window for a long time. So I'm trying to figure out if I have the time. But I did want to thank Casey. He recommended doing a backpack at a redfish lake in Idaho. And we followed up on his suggestion and we went to Alpine Lake, which was wonderful. So thanks, Casey.
Thanks. Patty.
I am looking forward to chanterelle hunting. I had none at all last year, of course, so there's much catching up to do and finding new secret places.
I forgot, last year we discovered there were several mycologists in this group. Now I'm remembering. David.
Hey everybody, good morning. I have two, one macro and one micro. The micro in my yard, we have a huge fig tree in the front yard, and in the fall and in the late summer, it always is time to start harvesting figs, and we just can't quite keep up with it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on a bigger scale, I haven't been across the Barbara Walker crossing yet, so I need to get out there so that I can go across that new bridge, which is just beautiful and spectacular. So I can't wait to go check that out.
Thank you, David. Adina.
So I spent the summer hiking and walking quite a bit. I've got a very large, very active dog who likes to join me. One of the things I was hoping to do this fall was to visit as many dog off leash areas that Portland Parks has, both for her to see different and meet other dogs, but also for me to get a sense of their condition and how we can improve them. And then in my yard, we actually spent a lot of money and had our yard redone, but we didn't do the landscaping. So I'm slowly but surely sort of chipping away at that. So hoping to spend a couple of weekends before the rain come, doing some pruning and some planting.
Thank you. Todd, how about you?
I am in the process of redoing my street frontage with my urban forestry tree planting permits to plant street trees and create a little bioswale. So I want a little rain, but not too much so I can get everything in the ground before it turns to mud.
Okay, we will all hope for the optimal amount of rain for people doing landscaping. Tim, what about you?
I apologize. I was on the phone with the commissioner's office for a second to deal with a media issue, so I missed what the question was.
Well, what fall, summer things you did not get to that you're going to do in the fall that are parks related, preferably, but maybe not?
I guess just being out more. Like I thought that this summer I was going to be out a lot, and it really didn't end up that way. We're being really, really cautious around COVID, especially with the Delta spike. And so we've been really like homebodies for, where are we at now, a year and a half. And so I'm really hoping that in the fall, we're just able to get out and explore more, get the dog out, get him some exercise. And so just continuing to do what we would normally do in non-pandemic times and hopefully be able to do it in a safe way during the fall.
Yes, sounds good. Some semblance of normal. I like that. Lauren.
And my to-do list this fall and finishing in the winter is to finish up our park specifications so that we have consistent specs for building our parks. I've been working on that, not me personally, but our staff has been working on that for a while, and that's my goal.
Sounds like a very parks related goal, Lauren. Thank you. Maximo.
I'm looking to get out to a lot of our parks programs, sites and locations. We were really happy to be able to offer in-person programming this summer and continuing on into the fall. So definitely want to get out and be able to see those activities taking place. On a personal note, I'm a tennis player by trade and usually get to the end of most summers wishing that I had got out to enjoy the outdoor weather more often. So always hoping to catch a little more here in the fall.
Thank you, Maximo. Kenya.
I didn't get around to building as much furniture as I wanted to this summer because of COVID. The filters for the respirator that I actually use in my wood shop, they're out, and they've been out for over a year. So I'm hoping that I can track down some respirator filters so I can get back into finishing some of those honeydew projects.
Thank you. Margaret.
Well, this time of year, I think about Hoyt Arboretum and Powell Butte, two of my favorite places to go walking and see the leaves changing color. And it's just beautiful, especially from Powell Butte when you look across the landscape. And then, of course, enjoying a great pumpkin spice latte.
Well, you can have mine. Claudio.
Yeah, so COVID was the year or now year plus of dog knee surgeries. So after recovering from those, I really got out of the habit of taking my dog to the dog park. So looking to develop that habit again especially before the weather turns, so that it's something that's just part of what we do again. So.
Sounds good. So you'll have to walk in between the rains that the landscapers want. Jen.
Good morning, all. To be brief, I could talk on and on about the list, but birding with friends, more of that. We had a juvenile Cooper's hawk in our Doug fir just the other day, and all the sparrows just disappeared. It was a fantastic show. Studying tree diseases, which is always really fun, and I'm working on that. And then somebody mentioned McNeil Point. I think it was Adrian. I got to hike up there 2 weekends ago, and I have more hiking to do. I haven't been able to do much of that lately, but I just wanted to say that it was very busy, but everyone was wonderful. Great trail etiquette. Dogs were on leashes. Folks were happy and relaxed. It was amazing. So when you go, Adrian, I hope it's like that for you.
Thank you, Jen. Vicente.
Yes, I guess I'll hit a little bit of both. What I wanted to do more of, actually what I wanted to do, I didn't get a chance to do, is go camping. I had it marked and ready, but just never happened. Too many incidents and smoke and fire and too hot some weekends, so just never made it happen, but still trying to make that happen, maybe a Hail Mary here into the fall. And then what I wanted to do more, or what I've done recently, like doing often, is birding. So I got a chance to go out yesterday and caught some pelicans, some American pelicans. So maybe I'll put some photos in the chat that I took yesterday, but it's always exciting to see those. I saw them flying a couple times on a couple other outings, but they were in the water yesterday fishing and chopping up some stuff. So good stuff.
Nice. Thank you. I think I got everybody, but there was some movement of the boxes. So did I miss anyone? Okay. Thank you for sharing, everybody. So with that, we did August minutes already. We can go into the director's report.
Great. Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, everyone. That was a good icebreaker. Made me think of additional things that I need to do that I probably won't get to, but it's always great to hear and learn a little bit more about you guys. So I hope everyone got a chance to review the monthly report that was forwarded with the board packet. And I wanted to note also that we've begun sharing the employee newsletter called Pay Dirt as well. I hope that you find these both informative and inspiring. Today, I'd like to give a quick update on Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, and then provide a brief summary of some upcoming City Council agenda items as well. So for Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, our listening and learning work team led by Melissa Arnold has been listening to community to inform our mission, vision, values, and equity statement, future decision support tools for the Bureau, and the actions and results plans that we'll be developing this fall. Just as a reminder, we have 2 waves of listening and learning that are planned. We've completed our first wave of listening. Internally, we held 2 employee gatherings in May, a workshop with DEC, the Diversity and Equity Committee, and FEST, the Fostering Equity Support Team, and 2 workshops with our senior management team. We also listened and learned with you, the Urban Forestry Commission, the Native American Community Advisory Council, the Parks Accessibility Advisory Committee, a group of community leaders from East Portland, several leaders from immigrant and refugee communities, and staff and folks at Home Forward. We're working on developing a larger partnership with the Coalition of Communities of Color to help guide our work with the organizations and communities that they support. Now, after wave 1, we're working on synthesizing data from community listening to inform our next steps. The listening and learning team will also be incorporating past community listening. For example, our 2017 community needs survey, our recent levy level of service work, and listening related to the levy, which we did in the fall of 2019. 2 additional work teams are being formed to create the next deliverables for Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. That's the Mission, Vision, Values, and Equity Statement team and the Actions and Results team. These teams will include staff with expertise, representatives from the Equity and Inclusion team and DEC Fest, as well as representatives from our advisory boards and commissions, community-based organizations, and culturally specific organizations that represent the communities that we are centering in this project. I want to thank Erin Zolenkoff for agreeing to serve on the Mission, Vision, Values, and Equity Statement team, and Adrian Feldstein for joining the Actions and Results team. So we'll be reaching out in the next few weeks with information and scheduling. Also joining the Mission, Vision, Values, and Equity Statement team from the Portland Parks Foundation is Jessica Green. So we're really excited to have her. We're working on some communications materials for Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland as well. There will be a 1-pager and a web page so that we can easily share the information and work that we're doing with our stakeholders and with the public. And we'll make sure that we share these widely once they're developed. Finally, we're planning for our next employee gatherings, which will be in October and November. We're working on the agendas, and we're looking forward to bringing back our staff once again. It's always fun to have several hundred people on a Zoom call that you don't get to interact with on a regular basis. I'm going to segue into the upcoming City Council. We have 2 regular agenda items that are going before Council tomorrow, Wednesday, the 15th. They include item number 677, which requests that the Council accept a bid of $1,873,598 from Phase On Construction for the Forest Park Entry Project, which is situated on a 3.9 acre property at the intersection of Northwest St. Helens Road and Highway 30 and Northwest Kittredge Avenue. The Bureau will be asking Council to accept the bid to construct a scope of work that will provide the public with a developed access point to Forest Park by constructing vehicular parking, a trailhead with signage, stormwater improvements, repairs to Fire Lane 1, permanent stormwater controls to remediate environmental concerns and meet DEQ stormwater related mandates, as well as future landscape improvements. This project's been discussed at length in the Land Use and Infrastructure Committee. And if anyone has questions about it, we're happy to answer. Item 680, which directs myself and the Chief Procurement Officer to deviate from the social equity and contracting strategy for the purpose of preparing a bid for the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center. This resolution is essentially asking Council to consider a test case modification of the standard procurement request for proposals template so that we can recognize disadvantaged minority women, emerging small business, and service disabled veteran business enterprises that are not certified by the state of Oregon. So we're basically trying to extend our net beyond Oregon for this particular RFP because we've done quite a bit of market research, and we know that there is a limited number of firms that will be able to, that have the experience to fulfill the RFP. So that's what I got. And I just want to open the floor, see if anyone has any questions about those items or anything in the report.
I have a question about something in the report, not those items. So I was just wondering about one of the things I noted in the report was the comment about initiating a private security contractor for Bureau assets. And I guess I was interested in just learning a little bit more about that.
I believe I know where that came from. So we had a rash of thefts at Delta Park, the urban forestry headquarters, over the course of a weekend and a week. And so we wanted to have some security that was going to be overnight security. The Rangers do not have an overnight tour of duty. And the police were unable to provide that level of service. So we engaged with an emergency contract to have security come on to do some security patrols there. We've also done similar contracts at Tabor Yard where we've had additional thefts. And I see Vicente just is now on camera, so hopefully I covered that correctly. Great.
Yeah, if anybody has any other questions, I can go into detail, but you covered it.
Erin, is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adina. Sorry, I just noticed that we had a couple other hands up here. And we also had somebody join the call who whose name we don't recognize and who wasn't here during the icebreaker. So Megan Daly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, sorry about that. I'm on my partner's account. Just a local citizen, and if you want me to answer the icebreaker question, it's to explore the archery center up in Washington Park and learn how to shoot an arrow again.
Okay. Thank you. Not Megan. Do you want to identify yourself at least?
So yeah, I'm just a citizen that is up in the hillside area up near Pittock Mansion. And we're just here, had a question, but we're going to wait for an open forum to be able to do that.
Okay, well, thank you. Welcome. I see Adrian's hand and Casey's hand is up. I think Adrian's was first.
Yeah, just a quick question, and it's probably more for my edification. If you could explain a little bit more about this RFP that relates to the Firehouse Cultural Center. This is a question for Adina.
Yep, I'm going to ask Lauren to jump in with specifics.
Sure, thanks. So the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center is a community-based art center on in North Portland. It's on Interstate. It was Portland's first Black cultural home for the Black community. It was founded by Portland's first Black elected official, Commissioner Charles Jordan. And we have been working with the Black community to reinvent the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center. We have, during Commissioner Fritz's time in 2018, she invited a group of individuals to create a vision really for the center. And then in 2019, they presented that vision to then former Commissioner Fish and Director Long and asked for support to implement the vision. In 2019, we began a preliminary study, a test fit study to see what would fit on the site and what would need to be upgraded to make that building more functional for the different efforts that they wanted to provide there. FFA Architect did that, and they determined that they could fit a cultural center on the site. And now at this point, we're trying to figure out what's feasible. And so the request for proposal that Adina was referring to is a broadcast out to the community for trying to figure out what the feasibility of an art center is in that particular location. Our preliminary studies said that it would be 30 million to 43 million to do for the design and construction of a site there. And so we're kind of looking into now at this point what the economic feasibility is, a market study, and we'll go from there. And so Adina, to Dina's point, the purpose of the council agenda item is to expand on social equity so that we can get a broader net of people applying for the RFP. Does that answer your question?
Casey?
Thank you, Director Long, for your report. And just my repeated question, I hope you're not getting bored with it. When do you think we might see a draft of the revised mission statement for parks?
Well, that group hasn't even started meeting yet. And I think we were talking about February.
Actually, my notes from a couple of rounds ago was that we'd probably see it by October.
Okay,
because I wasn't looking for a final. I was just looking for an initial draft to start seeing which way you guys are going.
Okay, Todd, Tim?
Yeah. So we'll be synthesizing all of the information that we've collected in this first round. And so when we convene the mission, vision, values group, they'll be getting all of that information. The form of that is and how precise those statements are. We'll see once we get the synthesis done, but that will be like the first viewpoint. And that, like you said, we hope that group will start meeting in October. So yeah, we'll
appreciate the updates.
We'll see what we have then. And then that group will help frame up the next wave of kind of engagement. And so that's where some decisions will be made about like how specific those statements are going to be, or if we need to collect more information before we're comfortable having more refined statements.
So I wasn't completely off. It's definitely going to be winter. Right, Todd?
Yeah, I mean, I think till we complete the second round of engagement with the community, you know, those will be more precise statements than we'll have this first round. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Randy's got his hand up.
Yeah, IFCC hasn't been before the infrastructure committee unless I missed a meeting in which it was presented. And I'm really curious about the scope of the study. I saw FFA's study, which only was looking at how it basically could be repurposed and expanded as a theater and arts center, but I'm wondering if the scope possibly could include, for instance, looking at housing on the site to, something along the lines of what Apano did, because I mean, there's a lot of money out there for housing right now, and it's a big site, and how extensive we're going to look at this, because it seems like it's going to be a really tough climb on, raising necessary money to build a theater.
So we can present that, Patty, if you want to have us do a presentation on that, we can do that too at the land use subcommittee.
And there's no, I mean, Randy, also to clarify, so we're looking to put together RFP, and I think that even internally, we also thought that there was a likelihood of a mixed use for the site, depending on how big, whether or not it's beyond the current footprint, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we've certainly been thinking along those same lines as well. So an RFP could consider those as well. But yeah, we can definitely present this to infrastructure.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for Adina, thank you, Director Long. We'll move into the working group reports, starting with community engagement. Erin?
Okay. Yeah, so we met last month and we learned a little bit more about what community engagement's doing. So the work has, community engagement's work has changing significantly in the past. It was more done around capital projects and some larger efforts like the community survey and the equitable urban forest strategy. The team's shifting to center underserved communities driven by Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, and to develop responsive and cyclical processes. They're building new systems, building trust, and building partnerships. Community engagement is also taking on a role around internal engagement. So there have been 4 all-staff employee gatherings. We talked a little bit about what constitutes the community when we're talking about a park and how Parks is uniquely positioned with its community centers and parks for doing community engagement, and wondering about how we're leveraging that unique position. Community engagement is strengthening its relationship with the recreation centers, which already have those relationships with a lot of, the users. And then we began a conversation around what our working group's priorities are going to be, and talking about increasing board visibility and attending events, both small and larger events, when appropriate. And really, we plan on continuing to learn more about how Parks engages, and to set our priorities so that we can advise. So yeah, so that was kind of our first 1-hour meeting, and we're meeting again, I think next week. So did I get that right? Anyone from the group or Tim or Kenya have anything to add? Good, cool.
Thank you, Erin. If nobody else in the group has anything to add, we'll move on to financial sustainability with Mike's report.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. So our group hasn't met since the last board meeting, but most of our group members are also on the Budget Advisory Committee and participated in 2 meetings in the last 3 weeks. So I do want to give an update on that. The purpose of the meetings was for Parks to solicit feedback from the BAC on the planned fall bump budget submissions, which include a pretty significant round of allocations of the park levy resources. So overall, the fall bump proposal requests funding for 34 proposals, which would require about $99 million of funding. $19 million of that is one-time funding, and the remainder is allocated for annual ongoing funding over the 5-year levy period. In terms of what are some of the more significant line items, for the one-time expenses, there's a $5 million proposed for new work order and asset management systems. A little over $4 million that's dedicated to contribute to reducing costs as a barrier in recreation services, and about $2 million allocated to emergency tree care and maintenance. And I'll add that $4 million dedicated to removing costs as a barrier is in addition, as I understand it, to $6 million that has already been allocated. So there's really $10 million in this fiscal year being allocated for that purpose. For ongoing expenses, significant areas of investment are tied largely to new staffing, predominantly in land stewardship, urban forestry, and assets and development. Overall, the proposals include the addition of 90 full-time equivalent employees. 41 of those are in land stewardship, 23 in urban forestry, and 20 in assets and development. So that's 84 out of the 90 new staffed positions will be in those 3 departments. As part of the BAC process, park staff gave us a really nice analysis summarizing how the funding proposal fulfills the priorities of the levy, which are recreation for all, to protect and grow nature, and community partnerships. 78% of the proposal funding supports the protect and grow nature priority, 42% supports recreation for all, and 28% supports community partnerships. So those add up to more than 100%, but that's because many of the proposals fulfill more than one of the priorities from the levy. So that was good to see. The bump request was submitted to council last Friday. There's going to be a work session on October 19th that's going to work towards hopeful approval by council at the end of the month. And then the BAC is in process of putting together a letter with our comments on the bump proposal, and that should be submitted to council relatively shortly. So that's it on the BAC. And then just one other thing I want to note that I saw in Adina's update is it looks like Parks has hired a new system development charge program coordinator, Daniel Ramirez Cornejo. I hope I pronounced that right. So we look forward to meeting him, and that's it. Any questions or comments from anybody else in the group?
Thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments from Mike or anything from anyone else in that working group? If not, we'll move into the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Patty.
Bonnie, I think Claudio came off mute for a moment there. Might have had something to add.
I didn't really need to take up air, but I wanted to thank everybody on the BAC and everybody from the board working group and the board that's on the BAC. Really appreciate all the service there, and Mike did really nailed that just all the details. So appreciate that. And as far as Daniel coming on board, yes, we're absolutely excited to have a new SEC program coordinator. So I will get him on the schedule to say hello to folks for next meeting.
I just had a quick comment, and that is just more like a note to watch out for this if it's not already on the radar of, and I think it kind of hovers over two groups, the financial sustainability and the community engagement. But I do think that there's some concerns around field maintenance, how like for athletic fields, especially given permit fees and how that ties into improvements to the park system, and how that relates to neighboring cities, neighboring areas, how our fields, sports athletic fields, compare to neighboring communities. I note that just because I think that there's some probably work to do to educate the users of those fields on what their money goes to pay for, because I think that there's an idea that there's a permit, but they don't get what they need, and so they think that it's not going anywhere. So I think there's probably some two-way communication around that to help those users understand the greater system at play, but also to make sure that their voices are heard in that process too. I know that's an ongoing piece.
Thank you, Nova. Yeah, that's a huge challenge in terms of, getting the voices, but also having the scope of what's possible be communicated back. So thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? And yes, the BAC letter is nearing, the draft exists. Melissa has got it now, I think, in some sort of close to final form. And it just was brought to my attention that Cynthia joined us. So Cynthia, if you want to just introduce yourself quickly and say hello.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Bonnie. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Cynthia Castro. I'm a senior policy advisor for Commissioner Rubio and her liaison to Portland Parks and Recreation, as well as Arts and Culture. I'm excited to see new members here. I was involved in that process, and so really excited to see you all here and just listening in. Thanks so much, Bonnie. Bye.
Thanks, Cynthia. And Cynthia was very instrumental in the process of screening and interviewing our new members. So thank you for that, Cynthia, for your commitment to the board. Okay, moving on. We're getting back to the working group reports, and I think we were going to go into Patty's report on land use and infrastructure.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yes, we covered a great many topics, so I'll just hit the high points here. We discussed the whole issue of capital project prioritization, a study that's been underway from September until June. And one of the issues was looking at the adequacy of existing facilities, not only in terms of people's distance from the facilities, but also the density of population served. So that's a distinct improvement on the process. We talked about the importance of ADA compliance. We have a great backlog of that work, of course, but it's something we need to pay attention to. We've looked at the scope for refining the priorities to make sure the money is spent in the right place. And of course, we came to the topic that Mary Margaret spoke to us earlier today about, which was a new pool in North Portland, the complications of that, versus maintaining access to the Columbia pool and the difficulties involved there. No conclusions drawn, of course. We talked about the Metro local share list and the criteria, the very tight criteria that Metro have for qualifying projects. But that is something that certainly is being pursued by staff. The Metro budget for this is quite substantial. And so we have an opportunity to add, for example, to our natural areas through that means. The question of tennis court repurposing and public process, there's been a great deal in the news about pickleball conversion and so forth. There has been pushback by tennis players saying, well, we are here too, and even if the courts aren't in great condition, we want to play. So I think the priorities for maintenance and improvement there is looking at both of those interests. We have looked at the problem of unauthorized park improvements like the Feral Cat Cove, the Selwood Pickleball initiative, and so forth. On the one hand, one wants to encourage the enthusiasm for citizens to join in improvements to parks facilities, but on the other hand, we have some very clear protocols we need to follow in terms of where the money goes and the order in which things are done. So that's a complicated issue that is yet to be really sorted out. Several other issues we touched on, but I think those are the most important ones. And if there are questions from others in the group, we can certainly address those. Hearing none.
Thank you, Patty. Did anyone from the working group have anything to add, or were there any questions of Patty for Patty?
Thank you.
If not, let's move on to Casey. I know you have a brief report with respect to the Board Affairs Working Group.
Yes, thanks, Bonnie. It's very brief. At the last meeting, we announced the formation of a new working group that's tentatively called the Board Affairs Working Group, which would review and provide recommendations on board governance policies and memberships. We asked for anyone interested in serving on the group to give me a call or contact me. We still need a few more volunteers. To help coax greater participation, part of today's packet that Brooke sent out includes a draft agenda for the Board Affairs Working Group, and within that are a list of issues that we're looking at to work on. The list is not exclusive. We would welcome any issue that would fit into the broad charge of the group. So my request today is simply to encourage you to review the list of issues or see if you have any interest in joining the group. And if you do, to please contact me. I'm hoping that we'll have our initial meeting of the group before the next board meeting. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions of Casey or any other volunteers for the Board Affairs Working Group? So Nova, I see Nova is asking where the list of Board Affairs issues is. It did come out in the latest board packet. So with the minutes and with the internal reports and the agenda. So if you want to take a look at that and the report that we're giving to the commissioners. So if you want to take a look at that, and if there's other issues that you want to bring to that working group's attention, Casey is taking those suggestions now.
And I'm available anytime.
Anything else on that? Okay, hearing none, let's move into the Portland Parks Foundation report. Randy.
Hi, everyone. We have been, to catch up a little bit, we had, of course, planned a big event on the South Park blocks called Paseo for August 27th and 28th. And right as the COVID spike was happening, and we had to make a very hard decision 10 days in advance of it to pull the plug on the live event. Our partner organizations, to sort of back up a little bit, Paseo was a huge effort to bring communities of color to downtown. And we have been working on it for over 6 months with a steering committee of social activists and arts folks from communities of color, and developed this whole festival around the idea of leveraging artist work and then also mutual aid groups. Our sort of coalition partners were very nervous about COVID for obvious reasons, and so we made this very difficult decision to pull the plug on the live event, and then made an equally difficult decision of what to do next. Since we were had basically scheduled all these artists, all these performers and whatnot, really felt obligated to pay them and to follow through. And so we developed a pivot that will be released hopefully this afternoon, maybe tomorrow morning, of a series of videos with the artists performing and talking about 13 mutual aid groups that we were going to support. Our sponsors, most of them have stuck with us on this. And so we are developing this sort of video campaign to support 13 mutual aid groups, and it'll be about 20 performers who will be doing those. We'll be pushing them out through our channels, and then all the artists and the mutual aid groups channels in the coming weeks. So this campaign, PGE and my board put up a $4,000 challenge. A couple of people on this call also contributed to that. Thank you. And we're going to try to multiply that challenge and then evenly distribute it between the 13 mutual aid groups. And so that will be happening during this month, and we'll tie it up toward the end of the month. Meantime, we've been kind of in down the Paseo rabbit hole in a big way, trying to do all this, but we are getting ready to launch our Friends and Allies Summit, which will be October 23rd through the 28th. It will begin with a day of service on October 23rd. This is an effort that we have been sort of carefully, working toward. Many years ago, the Parks Foundation had an event called Parque Diem. It was a volunteer event, and it kind of overwhelmed parks. There wasn't enough, staff bandwidth to really deal with so many people wanting to volunteer in parks. And so we're kind of gently restarting that idea with our Friends and Allies Summit of just pinpointing, a variety of parks and kind of focusing the efforts. And so that will begin on Saturday, October 23rd, and then we'll roll in. It'll be a summit that'll take place over several days, and we'll be addressing issues of houselessness in parks and around parks, and in general, with a keynote by Commissioner Dan Ryan, and we're going to build some other programs around that. There's sounds kind of dry, but there's tremendous interest in fiscal sponsorships amongst our Friends and Allies group. That landscape's kind of changing. And so we'll be doing some workshops around that, around volunteer development and retention. And we'll continue our ongoing equity discussion. My colleague Jessica Green is masterminding this whole thing, so I hope all of you can take advantage of at least some of the sessions. I think they'll be quite interesting, and we'll be getting more detailed agenda out in the coming days. And as I mentioned before, we had a very successful run with our first run of 20th anniversary parks posters with Laurelhurst and Peninsula Park. and the Wildwood Trail and Alberta Park. So we're going to tee that up again and do probably 4 more that will begin looking for designers, selecting the parts and looking for designers in the coming weeks, and then release those in the early part of the year. So again, if you have suggestions, parks you dearly love, would love to see a poster made of them. Send us suggestions. If you know designers who you think would be good, and I do mean designers. Some artists can work as designers. Others need a designer to do something like a poster. So we're really focusing on people who can design posters, and we're open to all kinds of suggestions there. So please let me know if you have thoughts about parks or designers. And then meantime, we're also working with PPR on kind of rebooting our relationship. That first session happens actually today. So we're really happy to get that going, and look forward to how that will evolve, given so many changes in the funding climate and just the general zeitgeist is very different than what it was 20 years ago when the Parks Foundation was founded. So thanks. Any questions? I'm happy to entertain.
Thank you, Randy. Sorry to hear about Paseo. Did anyone have any questions or comments for Randy on what the foundation is doing? Suggestions for designers? Thank you. So we'll move on to the next 2 agenda items. These came as requests from various board members. One is staff safety training about in terms of, we wanted to hear a little bit more about what the staff was being trained in terms of both, well, it was related to the extreme heat situation that we were going into, but also with respect to staff and de-escalation training and things like that, if they encountered challenges, and then the fire risk reduction efforts. So with that, we'll go into Vicente. I know that we had to postpone this because of time a couple of months ago, so we'd love to hear from you now. Thank you, Vicente.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Parks Board. Just wanted to, we're simultaneously dealing with a situation right now, so I'm trying to balance that out. So either way, thank you. I know this presentation was delayed a couple times, so I just want to talk to you before my colleague, Victor Sanders, who is the coordinator for the safety training, the safety and security program. We put together a presentation, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what this, there's a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes that won't be covered in this presentation. There's work with labor unions that we're doing, ongoing safety conversations that we're working with our labor unions on how to inform and properly train frontline workers on what they're encountering, including hot weather events. This won't also include shared initiatives with workforce development on comprehensive training budget that we're working on for ongoing safety trainings. We also do work with Portland Bureau of Emergency Management and collaborate with their leadership team on safety impacts on parks properties. This doesn't also include our monthly meetings with Portland Police that has a patrol focus on making sure we're getting proper information to our frontline staff about protest demonstration activity that's happening in our parks. This also won't include safety security best practices. That's a working group that we're part of. SPOT is an organization that is, or at least a committee that works within City Risk that has all of our safety and security managers working together monthly. So we've been a part of an ongoing group to put together safety and security best practices that will be universal to all frontline workers throughout the city. This won't include the staff resources that I think it actually will include a little bit of the staff resources that we have for the safety program that we've recently brought on, and Victor will speak to that. It won't speak to the ongoing messaging with staff in terms of collaboration with our communication teams and our risk specialists on COVID contact tracing and overall notification with the pandemic that is ongoing for the safety of staff. And last but not least, just ongoing safety and security bulletins and alerts that we send out on a as needed basis in terms of safety and security. So I just wanted to put those things on the table. So in case you're looking for those within this presentation, they're not going to be here, but we definitely can enlarge on any of those topics. I know I went through them relatively quick because I know we have time limitations. But with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Victor, who can take us through our training, and then we'll go to Q&A at the end if we have.
Great, thank you, Vicente. Can folks see my screen, I hope? Good, all right, great. Well, thank you. As Vicente had mentioned, my name is Victor Sanders. I'm a program coordinator for the Safety and Ranger programs here at PPNR. And as Vicente kind of ran through really quickly some of the things that we may not touch on today, that's been obviously very busy over the last 24 months, the last 18 of which have been wrapped up a lot with COVID related issues. So we'll dive right in and kind of talk through some of these items and have time at the end also for questions. So within PPNR is a work group called the Health, Safety, and Environmental Group that is made up of both our security program that involves park safety, so that includes things like rangers, and also our liaisoning with Portland Police Bureau and with other with other providers in the city like Portland Fire. And then we also have our OSHA worker safety program. So these are the written programs, more of your traditional work-related safety programs for our crews out in the field. Both of these in our work group are combined because of the public-facing nature of our business and the way that we interact with the public. So both of these are combined to create a singular place for safety trainings and what some refer to as kind of total worker health programming. So the levy funds, we'll talk about this in a minute, have allowed us to grow this quite a bit. So over the next 5 years, it's going to be a really exciting time to make sure that we involve all of our best practices. I'm going to close my window here for the dog barking outside. There we go. So the next 5 years are going to be really exciting for the Health, Safety, and Environmental Work Group. But today we're going to talk about what we've been seeing are the challenges for 2020 and 2021. We'll talk about 3 specific items. So the first one that we kind of touched on earlier was just reports of general harassment to staff and increased damage to assets. So that can be anything like gas siphoning out of our parks vehicles to physical break-ins of our assets to graffiti of our assets. And then of course, just some photos here to showcase that. And then, just increased hostility towards individuals that are working out in the field and in our parks. The second challenge that compounds all of this is increased dumping and trash in and around parks. So this is something I don't even have to show you photos for. Many of us are familiar with it. We've seen it in our parks. We've seen it in our public right-of-ways. Just the amount of overall trash and debris that ends up in the public realm, then that leads to a sense of loss of control. So for many of our staff out in the field, that compounds their daily activities. What was once something that they could do daily clean and care, now it exacerbates that issue and it adds to their the amount of time they're spending on this issue. And in areas where it continues to happen again and again, it just really starts to weigh on the staff. And then number 3, as I mentioned, the compounding issues. So over the last 24 months, we've seen just compounding emergencies, right? We've had COVID-19 for 18 months. In September 2020, which was actually last year around this week, we had the wildfire smoke. It's only supposed to last for 2 days, and then it was 3, and then it was 4, and then it encompassed an entire week, and that was on top of our COVID emergency. And then this year, of course, we had our extreme heat in July and then again in August. All of this occurring while we've got a homelessness crisis going on. And then of course, we know in January, we had the political turmoil and then just overall, just difficult political climate over the last 24 months as well and beyond. So all of that circles back to just total worker wellness and how are we responding to that. So one of the things that we did early on during the COVID-19 pandemic is we debuted a new mobile-friendly tool for reporting park problems by staff. Prior to this, you actually had to be logged onto the network in order to report problems to the Bureau, to the safety team. You needed to be sitting at a computer and to type in, hey, here's what happened to me. So we were hearing more and more from staff, anecdotal evidence. We're seeing some harassment. It doesn't really rise to the level of a criminal activity, so we're not going to make a police report on it, which is the right move in many cases. But we're seeing things out in the field that are just making me uncomfortable, or they're adding to the stress of the daily job. So we created a new mobile-friendly tool using the city's existing ArcGIS software. So folks now that are out in the field that have a mobile phone are able to log on and to record the incidents that they're seeing out in the field, whether it's harassment or graffiti or dumping or environmental concerns. So the reporting tool that we came up with was actually utilized later, a few months later, by, as Vicente mentioned, there's a SPOT team. The security team for the entire city actually used our model. And so they're collecting similar data from other bureaus now using our scheme here, so that we can combine all of this and see all of the different field going bureaus. Are we seeing the similar type of activity as PBOT employees or BES employees? So we haven't done a full analysis yet, but as we get into the end of summer, we're working with that SPOT team to start to analyze this data and better understand where are we seeing problems in the city, what type of problems, and how can we respond to that in a way that's going to be useful across the city for all of our field going staff. The other element of this was training. So we needed to respond in a way that was going to be useful for our field going staff without getting people all together, right? Because we weren't able to collectively get together like we usually would for our annual safety training. So we had to pivot pretty quickly. And this is, of course, as many of you know, difficult for folks that are working in the field that may not be as tech savvy, that are not able to sit down at a computer all the time and as part of just their daily job. So a few of the things that we offered this year was in winter 2020, Land Stewardship actually helped host this, or was the host for it, was Safety Considerations when Communicating with Individuals in Distress by Brad Taylor. Brad Taylor has been used by the city in different bureaus over the years as a way for frontline staff to better understand the nuances that come with interacting with individuals that we're seeing in our parks, particularly the increase in that over the COVID-19 pandemic. Of how to interact with those individuals and how to define your personal safety zone, how to know when to disengage, and how to know, Vicente can speak a little bit to this, of how exactly we should be doing our work when we're in an environment where we don't feel safe, and reiterating the Bureau's safety policy that if you're not feeling safe in the work that you're doing in the field in that moment, to disengage and to leave, and that you cannot be replaced, but all your equipment, all of the things that you're working on can. In 2021, we also offered 3 different offerings of mental health first aid hosted by the Office of Community and Civic Life. Taisha Riley McCool is one of the lead trainers on that. And so Taisha is able to come in and offer these trainings for folks. Many of the folks on SMT, senior management team, have also taken this training over the last couple of years. In 2021, summer, we also the safety team recorded different safety trainings for our recreation and frontline staff, so that they're able to view those at any time. Since again, getting everybody together at the same time digitally is incredibly difficult. And then finally, with the equity inclusion team, the safety team did division specific outreach. So actually going out and meeting with teams individually to talk through some of the safety issues that they're seeing, talk through some of the equity considerations that come with that, and learning more about how we can help those that are out in the field. Vicente, do you have anything to add on this one?
No, I don't. Thank you to Kenya Williams, who was a colleague, again, shared initiative with our equity team. So we're always available to do that ongoing, and thankful for the people that took advantage of that. So
great. And then a couple really exciting things that I really enjoyed this summer was we were able to secure a trainer, Lori Hoffer, in July, that did a training on responding to trauma and traumatic events. So as I mentioned, that compounding issue was something that we saw was building on staff. And throughout the entire Bureau, and I'm sure many of you here, learning how to define what trauma means over the last 18 to 24 months, identifying how it impacts us both individually as an organization, and learning how to create different resiliency strategies. One element, go ahead.
There's a follow-up to this training as well. It's a 2-part series. On September 30th, Lori will be coming back and doing a follow-up on these same topics. So that's all I wanted to add.
Great, yeah. Lori was a really exciting trainer. She was one of the lead individuals in doing the traumatic debrief of the Columbine disaster so many years ago. So it was interesting to have her perspective on these traumatic events that we're seeing and the compounding issues that our staff are going through. And then final point on this is that the Employee Assistance Program, as of this year, was available to all seasonal staff. Actually, that may have happened early or late last year during COVID. So that is a really exciting element. The Employee Assistance Program provided through Cascade Centers provides all types of resources to staff, including low cost and no cost counseling for staff and their families.
Just really quickly to add as well, with the mental health first aid and the traumatic events impacting our agencies, both of those required intakes that were specific to parks. So they didn't come in and just generally talk about just general topics. We provided them with examples, information, details on what our staff was encountering. They were able to customize the training to our needs. So just wanted to add that.
So what else is on the docket? Later in October, we are doing a 1-hour introduction for all staff to verbal judo. So the essentially the art of de-escalation. And this is going to be a really cursory introduction to what verbal judo can provide, its limitations and its positive aspects. And so we'll be working with our team on rolling that out to all staff and then determining how to continue to do that training for those staff where it is most appropriate. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've got that new reporting tool. So we're going to continue to analyze the report data to better understand what are those staff reported problems that we're seeing through summer 2021. How do they compare with the rest of the bureau, or rather with the rest of the city's reporting, and how can we continue to tailor that to make it as easy as possible? You know, sometimes even the quick mobile friendly form, like we say it's quick, right? But it can be as long as you want it to be. We want to be able to capture all of these micro instances that are happening without burdening staff who do have a job to do and feel, you know, very passionate about the job that they're doing out in the field, and not have to get them bogged down in terms of you know, sitting there and filling out a report. So we're continuing to refine that as we go along. And then finally, we're onboarding 2 new risk specialist staff September 30th, which I'm very excited about. And they're going to be focusing on our OSHA written programs as well as our overall total worker health programming. So that's a really exciting piece. Again, with the levy funding, we're able to do that, and we're able to provide more support overall as a bureau for both of those specific programs that are OSHA required, but also the nuances of a park's public facing environment when it comes to worker safety. And then we also wanted to touch on the ranger program enhancements. So folks likely had seen back in April, we being the bureau were provided with a council investment of $1.4 million for additional seasonal staffing. That provided funding for 22 new seasonal staff. So that was in April, the money was there in May. So we continue to ramp that up throughout the summer period, and we'll be able to have a look back here in a couple months on how we continue to use that council investment. But that's been very exciting because it's also meant additional funding for our training programs. So in April, we were able to continue to have a robust academy, an entire week plus experts come and speak with our new seasonals as well as our existing staff. And we plan to have an additional academy in October as we, with that funding, we were able to sequence new staff coming on along with our increase in supervisory support. Since bringing on 22 new staff is a huge endeavor, so we had to parse that out, and we continue to parse that out. So we'll be holding another academy in October in order to provide up to 2 weeks of additional training for those existing seasonals as well as our new seasonals coming online. And just a quick glance at what those trainings look like for our academy. We do a module on urban ecology of Portland, on dog bite and dog safety through an organization based out of, can't remember where they're based out of, but they provide really detailed training on how to handle dog bites, educational enforcement, so that's the verbal judo aspect, situational awareness and threat assessments, scenario-based disengagement trainings, anti-bias trainings, of course, legal updates and procedural review, a workshop on ranger interpretation, more of your traditional type ranger work for informal type engagements, trauma-informed communications work, first aid, CPR, AED, of course, and then learning about stress reduction and the employee assistance program, and then water safety. And this is on top of other annual trainings that we continue to provide to our ranger staff in the field. And the last bit on here was new technology for ranger data collection. So part of the funding also provided us with new tools for data collection to better understand how rangers are patrolling, how we're sending them out in the field, how they're responding to issues in the field, and what are those problems that we're seeing in the park. So we have new tools on the iPads and the iPhones that rangers carry that detail with GPS, exactly what we're seeing out in the field. So this has been really exciting in responding to issues, hearing about issues, overlaying this on other data that we have in the city to better understand where we're spending our time, where are the issues that we're seeing reported from staff and how are rangers responding to that, where are they lining up, where are there disparities, so we can better understand how to allocate our resources. So really exciting, but again, we've got new staff coming on at the end of the month that are really going to help out in relieving some of the pressure that we have in undertaking all this work and spending more time in building out an even stronger program as we move into winter and into next summer. So Vicente, I will hand it over to you if you've got any closing remarks here, and then open it up for questions.
I think one of the closing remarks is, our security and safety team, along with our bureau leadership, has really had an opportunity to step in some unprecedented times and really step up to the plate. Since I've been in the bureau, there has really never been this level of interaction in terms of safety, proactiveness in dealing with situations that our staff have been letting us know about, and kind of forecasting and proactively dealing with things that they're encountering. So just wanted to just say that thank you to all those that have participated again in helping bring this to fruition. And I see a hand up, Adrian.
Thanks. This is truly impressive. I mean, I think the Ranger program in general is impressive, and what you've put together in training and staff safety and enhancement is pretty amazing. Question that I would have for you is, to what extent are the employees taught to partner with other community agencies? I mean, we haven't seen the data yet, but my guess is many issues are people who are chronically in parks and have mental health issues, and things escalate. And so part of the proactive approach would be recognizing what is the need of the person to a degree: housing, mental health services, etc. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I'm probably going to be missing something, so if anyone else wants to jump in, be more than welcome. But I know that our safety and security staff participate weekly on a coordination call with all of the service providers in the city in terms of houselessness outreach, law enforcement, as well as mental health first aid providers. And what we do on that call is really talk about specific situations that we're encountering in the park, ongoing situations that our staff are seeing in the field, and allocate the resources appropriately. Sometimes making those calls on our own can really just have our wheels spin in terms of getting a solution in place. But when we have a chance to directly dialogue on that call weekly, we can really pinpoint situations where we can really direct resources where they need to go. So collaboration is one of the city's core values, and in parks has really been doing that. Again, Parks has really set the standard for the city, quite frankly, in many areas. And this is one where our collaboration internally and externally, specifically with our Ranger program, with outreach to Join as a partner that we work with, Portland Street Medicine. I mean, there's a myriad of partners we work with, but that has been able to be bolstered with that coordination call weekly. So that's just one example. I'm sure there's more, but just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd actually love any comments that supervisors would have on how the Portland Street Medicine has been working for the parks.
I'll comment if no one else has anything. I mean, Portland Street Medicine is great. I think they provided a de-escalation training for our staff as well. Last year, we've been able to collaborate. You mentioned collaboration. We were able to collaborate with Metro Park Rangers, Metro Park security staff, on a Ranger Summit where Portland Street Medicine came in and did a training on, it was de-escalation, but it was a particular type of de-escalation, trauma-informed de-escalation. So they've been a great partner, very responsive, and hopefully they continue to get more resources so they can serve the greater need that has came upon us in the past 24 months. So.
Erin has her hand up.
Yep, Erin.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so I'm wondering about users' safety in the parks. If a user, you know, there's something going on in the park that's making them not feel safe or them not feel safe with their children, what's the avenue? I would have no idea how to call a ranger, for instance. Is that even what the rangers are there for? You know, maybe I don't want to call the police for various reasons, and ranger might be a good option. You know, I'm just curious about if that's an option for users of the parks when there might be a safety issue at the park.
I can start this and then someone else can chime in, but you know, park rangers is just one component of park safety, right? There's a big lighting project that Lauren can probably speak to in greater detail in terms of assessing the lighting throughout our system and being able to put security measures in play on, it's actually really dynamic, where they can increase lighting electronically in certain areas that are areas of concern or dark spots, if you will, so that people can feel safer when they're in the park throughout the winter or when the sun goes down. Calling the rangers is obviously one aspect, but one thing that's going to streamline that, and Victor can touch on, is our dispatch option that we're going to have in place here. We just finally were able to get a dispatcher on board. So instead of going through our customer service line that's intaking thousands of calls, they're able to reach out directly to a dispatcher that can connect them with a ranger in the field so that we can respond to those type situations. Victor, did you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, just to kind of speak to that a little bit, we've been working closely with the 311 team at the city. So 311 is going to be a new service that's rolling out. It's actually out right now. That's designed to be kind of the one call operation for anything related to city services. So we're currently exploring how can we build in the ranger model so folks build a mental map of the city when they think about, okay, police, like and then there's a life-threatening emergency. I know it's 911, right? But when it's not emergency and I'm not quite sure, but there is a safety concern, maybe it is 311 in the future. And you may have seen some writing about that in the Oregonian last week around 911 wait times and the interest to start moving to 311. So we're looking right now at how can rangers be a part of that, and how can we have it so when you call 311 for a park safety issue that isn't really, it may not rise to the level of police, but it rises to a concern that can go directly to rangers so that you're not having to remember all these different phone numbers in the city. And then of course that comes with, to your point, some messaging around rangers are one piece of the public safety puzzle in the city, and we respond to park rule issues and park safety issues that don't rise to the level of something needing, crime in progress that would need police, right? Somebody with a gun or somebody that's making, really intense threats that, you believe rise to the level of needing police. So there's some community outreach and messaging that needs to come with that. But we hope that 311 can be one piece of that puzzle so folks can have a one call location.
Before we go to Alejandro and Jen, I think the last piece of that is we do work with Office of Community and Civic Life, who provide, it's called CEPTEDS, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. So we're always assessing our spaces, and our planning team really kind of does that proactively in the development of parks, the overall assessment of parks on where do hedges need to be trimmed up, where are there blind spots in the park? If a security personnel or first responder comes to the park, do they have sight lines? Will they be able to get to and respond to situations more quickly? So all of those considerations go into park safety, and we're collaborating even more now on how we can enhance those for the overall safety of parks. I think Jen was next.
Yeah, yes, quickly, we did have Jen and Alejandro with their hands up, but then we do need to move on to the next agenda item soon here. So go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Bonnie. I wanted to share that as a parkie for going on 10 years and the manager of a program that's a 24/7 operation, the things you're hearing about in safety and security training, just on-site security, are outstanding. We've never had this type of support and engagement before. And it's really encouraging for staff. And I think it also relates to staff retention at this point, because things around town are a little bit sensitive for a lot of people. So I just wanted to share that from my experience with the Parks Board, and thank Vicente and Victor and Todd and Director Long for their leadership on this.
Thank you, Jen. Alejandro.
Yes, thanks, Bonnie. Vicente and Victor, just a quick follow-up. In the context of this work that you guys are doing, has there been any additional conversations about, specifically about communications and messaging regarding park rules for the general public? This in the understanding that a lot of the safety concerns that might come from actually enforcement of rules in the park. I mean, I know of multiple experiences in particular regarding dogs off leash at parks that the interactions are never good. Just want to make sure that that piece is also being considered in this process.
Yeah, just really briefly, I mean, we've had a great enhancement of our communications with our comm teams on how to do that appropriately, on how to message out to the community, what park rules people frequently violate, what's the best response, our constituent responses to when we receive those inquiries and emails, because whenever things go south, we definitely get a follow-up email. So working closely with our comms team, Tim was able to help us proactively get some messaging out during COVID, and we're going to continue to work on that. And Tim has just been a great addition to the team to really get the right message out at the right space and tone. So I think that will continue to enhance over the years. I know they're working on a ranger message now. Tim, you can speak to that, and we can transition to the next agenda item.
Yeah, thank you, Vicente. You know, like a lot of things within the park system, we need to do a lot of proactive communication as we build up capacity through levy funding. It's going to be something we're able to address. One of the things we're working on now is a ranger video, making sure that people understand the ranger's role in public safety, how they can be contacted, highlighting specific park rules, things like that. And it's just going to be part of an ongoing process for the ranger program, for forestry, other aspects of our work that we need to be more proactive, and capacity is going to allow that. So looking forward to it. Looks like Todd's got his hand up.
I just wanted to call everyone's attention to the chat. So there's some useful resources there for either getting ranger service if you're in a park. There's an email as well as a telephone number, and then Multnomah County Animal Control for any animal issues they can help. And then if you're seeing someone that's camping in a park that needs social services and help, there's a one point of contact campsite reporting system the city uses.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicente and Victor, for your presentation, and to Director Long and Deputy Director Lofgren for the resources that you provided us. I'm interested to know how it all integrates with the park scan and whatnot, but that seems like it's a whole nother agenda item. So I will leave it there for now. Thank you for the resources and the information. Unfortunately, we do need to move into the fire safety. Corbin, do you have something that's burning?
Yeah, just a quick question regarding what are the plans as far as having on-site information for community members? Because a lot of times they're not going to read before they actually approach the park, and they're going to come with their picnic stuff or what have you. And so what is the on-site options for informing public, whether that's a QR code that they can download, the rules and regulations before they start their day?
On some sites, we've had some really very basic information, and that's again something that we'll take note of and work with our parks asset managers to enhance that communication. So there's really not much more than we can say for that right now, but definitely intake that and move it into our process moving forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank you again for the information, Vicente and Victor. Really appreciate it, and for all the resources for everybody to have. Thank you. Moving on, we do have a little bit, just about 20 minutes left for our fire risk reduction efforts. I think I saw Kendra and Laura both here. This came as a response, some of the concerns related to the extreme heat that we had, and concerns about potential fire danger, both caused by human and natural activity. So Kendra and Laura.
Thanks so much. Great to be here with you all today. So I'm Kendra Peterson Morgan. I work for the Parks Bureau as the City Nature West Supervisor. And I'm here with my colleague, Laura Lehman, who's our Senior Natural Resource Planner. And we're going to be doing a presentation for you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and see if it works, and hopefully it will. Just a few things, since we're a little bit short on time. I want to make sure that we get to our, so hard to talk and do this, cue these things up at the same time, isn't it? So can you see my slide deck?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I would ask, if you have questions, please stop us along the way if it's something that's like a term or something on the slide that you want further clarification about. But other general questions, if we can hold these till the end, that would be great. I'm going to start off the presentation, and then Laura is going to wrap us up. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my role in the Bureau so that you can understand the perspective that I'm presenting today. So I'm the supervisor for City Nature West, which is the team that manages 8,000 acres of natural area on the west side of Portland. So that's Forest Park and 35 other natural areas. We also have a citywide soft surface trails team and a stewardship program that connects people to nature. So largely this presentation that I'm sharing is going to be really pretty heavily focused on what we're doing in Forest Park. But there are other efforts throughout the city as well. And I'll try to touch on those a bit. And then Laura is going to provide more of the parks-wide perspective. So we've been talking about wildfire risk in the city of Portland for some time now. In 2009, there was a wildfire gap analysis that was done that really identified 3 main areas of concern in Forest Park, in Portland, which included Forest Park, Powell Butte, and the Willamette Bluffs near University of Portland. And at that time, we did a lot of work to respond to reduce those wildfire fuels, largely vegetation management, but we have not had ongoing funds to address this issue on an ongoing basis. And so with the Eagle Creek fire, fast forward to 2017, we really had our awareness enhanced as these wildfires came into our own region in a very clear and present way. It was around this time that my phone started really ringing off the hook from people, particularly around Forest Park, who are very concerned about their wildfire risk, what Portland Fire and Rescue would be able to do to respond to them, and what actions they could take on the ground. So as our awareness has enhanced, I think we've all had the experience of really living through several intense wildfire seasons. We've breathed the smoke. We have seen the impacts of climate change from ongoing drought. This map that I'm presenting here on the slide show right now shows wildfire hazard zones. So in brown are parks that are—
You need to advance your slides. You're not in slideshow mode.
Oh,
and you're still on the first slide. Yep.
Oh, thank you so much. You missed some really good slides then. I am not in slideshow mode. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know how to fix that. Swap presenter view in slideshow. Is that what I do?
No, I don't think so.
Huh. Are you seeing a slide?
Now you're good. Now you're good.
Okay, thank you so much for telling me that. I really—
and then just use the arrow to advance. You're on the map now.
Okay, great. So Let me just touch base on this image now because it's pretty compelling. So you should see an image of the Eagle Creek fire with an overlay of Forest Park. And this is really to demonstrate how quick these mega fires move and what the impact of a large fire could be for Forest Park in the Portland metro region. So Forest Park is roughly 5,200 acres, and the Eagle Creek fire, when it was contained, was almost 50,000 acres. So this image was developed by the Oregon Department of Forestry to really showcase that. Okay, now you should be seeing an image of the wildfire hazard zones throughout the city. Can someone give me a verbal?
Yep.
Okay.
We got it.
Awesome, thank you. So the image here is really showing parks that are within the wildfire hazard zone. And what that is, that's terminology that's determined by the fire chief based upon topography, based upon vegetation composition, and then based upon the fuel load within those areas. And associated with that in blue is the wildfire hazard zone that overlays individual landowners. So my point here is that we are really seeing an increase in awareness around wildfire risk and a realization that we are in a different circumstance today in 2021 that needs to be addressed for our region. So around this time, Portland Fire and Rescue reached out to Portland Parks and Recreation and asked if we'd be interested in applying for a Fema grant, a rather large Fema grant, to reduce wildfire risk in Forest Park. And we enthusiastically agreed and moved forward with this proposal to target 500 acres in the Linton neighborhood, which has been identified as a high fire risk, a community at risk due to the embeddedness of these homes, as you can see on this map, where people are living really up and in, surrounded by the park, and then challenges with topography, access, and even water pressure for fighting fires. So after 2 long years of going through the FEMA process, we were just awarded this grant. It's roughly $450,000 to address, do vegetation management in the park, and then also a big outreach and education component to adjacent landowners. So over the past 2 years, though, we haven't been sitting around twiddling our thumbs. We've been doing a lot of really incredible work and building partnerships with Portland Fire and Rescue so that we can address these issues in a comprehensive way. So now I'm going to take you through some of the on-the-ground work. So you should be seeing a photograph of Fire Lane 1, which is one of our important fire access points along the eastern frontage of Forest Park. And this was really an issue for us because in April, we had an unprecedented burn ban across the city that I'm sure you all remember, and subsequently had 2 fires that were started, wildfires that were started in this area from houseless camps. And when fire went to respond, because the roadbed was in such poor condition in this area, they actually had an ATV fall off the road. So we were able to utilize this as an opportunity to really respond as a city with some improvements to this site, to build back up the roadbed, to do the vegetation management, to cut back blackberry that was encroaching on the road, and to mow this area so it's much more accessible than it was previously. This is a picture of Kim Kosmas, who's my right-hand woman at Portland Fire and Rescue. She has been fantastic, and the Portland Fire and Rescue Bureau has been really instrumental in helping us communicate our needs to larger entities. So this is a photograph of one of the utility corridors in the park where PGE has been doing vegetation management that has been increasing fire risk. And having the communication and partnership with fire is so huge because it really adds to the legitimacy and the requests that we are trying to put forward to have large utility companies change their practices so that their ongoing maintenance practices are not contributing to increased wildfire risk in the park. So now, instead of talking to individual landowners on a weekly basis. I'm calling up Portland Fire and Rescue, and they're really helping us to address these issues, which is fantastic to have that partnership. So a big part of wildfire risk reduction is vegetation management. And this is going to be a focus of the work that we're doing, that we have been doing, and that we will be doing with the enhanced funding from FEMA. So this is a photograph of tree ivy, and our standard practice was to cut that at eye height and then remove kind of a buffer around the base of the tree. So we're really building upon our existing practices and refining them in the face of climate change and the need to reduce fuels in the park. So now it is really critical that we provide a bigger gap. So you can see this gap is about 3 feet from the ground. So with consultation from Oregon Department of Forestry, we're going to increase that gap to 10 feet so that we don't have a potential ground fire move up into the canopy of the tree with what those dead vines are, which is something called a ladder fuel. So we're really modifying our common restoration practices, improving them, changing them, and being really adaptive. Additionally, we've been working with urban forestry and also the Oregon Department of Forestry to do some selective pruning of native trees. So this is within the wildland urban interface, which is 200 feet from a structure where we are limbing up trees, again, creating a disconnect from a potential ground fire that could move up into a canopy fire. This is being done with certified arborists so that we protect tree health and can do this in a way that is sustainable and will not be impactful to these trees that we're pruning. This is a photograph of the Upper Springville area off of Skyline. This is one of our newest FireWise communities that's been developed. FireWise is a national program you may have heard of, and it is really developed to help landowners reduce their fire risk through awareness, through organization, and through action. So when I talked about that pruning work that we're doing, it's incredibly labor intensive. So if you were to draw a buffer around Forest Park, 200 feet around every structure, that's a lot of acreage. And so we have been able to organize some collaborative work parties where we work with volunteers to do this pruning work. We have our arborists doing that work, and then we have the volunteers hauling that debris, doing that really labor intensive work to haul the debris to a roadside, where we can then come back with our staff and do the noisy, loud, kind of dirty chipper work and chip that debris up and put it back into the natural area. So we're not creating a fire risk from those wood piles. So another really critical component of the wildfire risk reduction program is communication. And a great thing is that the FEMA grant has a major outreach and communication component to it. Our partners at the Forest Park Conservancy are taking the lead on this communication, and they have a live website that you can look at today at forestparkconservancy.org/fire, which has tons of great information. You can get information about how to get your home assessed by Portland Fire and Rescue if you are within the wildfire hazard zone. They'll come out and do a free assessment and provide guidance on practices that you can take on the ground to reduce your risk through the removal of vegetation, through modification of that vegetation, through changes in building materials. Roofing materials is a really huge issue. So it's a great free service that Portland Fire and Rescue offers. There's information on the website about how to become a member of a FireWise community, and then information on the Canopy Weed Program, which is a fantastic program that the Forest Park Conservancy runs with West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District to remove invasives on private property adjacent to Forest Park. And that has the twofold benefit of reducing invasive seed that could be coming into the park, and also to reduce those ladder fuels that I discussed earlier. So this is going to be an ongoing platform of information about the grant, the technical aspects that we're taking, and wildfire risk reduction in general. So another big part of our communication strategy was to try to raise the awareness of the public around fire danger. So we've put in 8 of these signs around Forest Park in different locations that were selected for their high visibility. This is my daughter Nev, showing that the fire risk today is high and has been for several months. These signs are being placed in places that are at trailheads where park users can see them, but they're also along roadsides so that passerbys are we're just enhancing the awareness and understanding of our community about the threat of fire danger. There were also signs placed at Rocky Butte and Powell Butte to communicate this message to the public. We've also placed these fire danger signs in every park throughout the wildfire hazard zone. So this is really communicating our park rules that we do not allow smoking, we do not allow fireworks, and we do not allow fire in parks. And if you see these activities, that you report them, so to the appropriate source. This is a location some of you might recognize in the background. That's the Stone House in Forest Park, which has been a place of a lot of concern and consternation this summer, because it is a destination for teenagers to go and party after hours, often accompanied by tiki torches. And so there's a lot of concern about the fire risk of those activities. Fortunately, rangers and Portland Fire and Rescue have been really active in doing outreach to those teens and have been posted on evenings when they typically go out to talk to those teens and to try to keep them from going into the park and engaging in those really risky behaviors. So this is my last slide before I hand it over to Laura. I just want to wrap up and say that our wildfire risk reduction strategy is really 3-pronged. It is to do vegetation management on private and public property in the wildfire hazard zone. It is to encourage landowners to take action on their properties to reduce their fire risk through their own actions, and then also through adjusting building materials. And then probably the most important piece is the communication and outreach strategy. I think that, you know, our greatest tool for emergency preparedness is really connection and creating these connected communities. This is a sign in our Firewise area near Springville that shows a connection of people to each other. It shows a connection of people to organizations, and it just shows enhanced communication and collaboration between all of these individuals and organizations. So I think Forest Park is a great demonstration of what can be done, and I'd love to see this amplified throughout other areas in the city. Laura is going to take over now. I'm going to hand it over to her. And Laura, I can advance your slides for you.
That would be lovely. Thank you. I only have 2 slides, so I'm going to try to keep it quick here. I know we're running out of time. So I just have 2 quick updates for you about 2 planning projects that we're working on at the moment that are related to wildfire risk mitigation. And just for background, in the context of these plans, when we talk about risk mitigation, we're talking about the things that we do before the wildfire happens to reduce the potential effects of a hazard of the fire. And so the actions that we're working on, that we're coming up with in these planning efforts, are both focused on what we do prior to a wildfire event so that we're as ready as possible and we can minimize those impacts as much as we can. So the first one I'm going to talk about is this update to the City of Portland Mitigation Action Plan, also known as the MAP. This is a City of Portland project. It's led by the Bureau of Emergency Management. This plan was first adopted in 2004. It was last updated in 2016. And this current update includes our Bureau, as well as Fire, Water Development Services, Planning, Sustainability, Environmental Services, and Equity and Human Rights. risks. And this plan looks at most of the natural hazards that can occur here in Portland. So it's not specific to wildfire, but wildfire is one of the hazards that it looks at. It also looks at smoke, earthquakes, floods, landslides, and extreme weather. One of the reasons why this plan is important is having it in place meets mitigation planning requirements that we have to meet in order to be eligible for FEMA grant funding. So that is really important to try to be eligible to continue to get funds, such as the funds that are helping Kendra do the great work that they're doing in Forest Park. And it also meets floodplain management requirements that allow our residents to participate in the flood insurance program. So the mitigation action plan includes an analysis of each of the hazards that could happen here, including wildfire. And then it also includes a project list, mitigation projects. And the projects listed in the plan are eligible for grant funding for FEMA. And oftentimes there are grant programs through FEMA where if a project's not in the plan, it's not eligible for funding. So it's important that we get all our projects on the list. Park staff have been working internally to identify projects to include in the final project list for this plan. This is still in process. We're still working on it. But the items that we have right now are focused on mitigating wildfire danger in natural areas, identifying funding for vegetation management and fuels reduction, and also refining mapping of wildfire hazard zones, making sure we have a really good understanding of where those risks are at their highest. Because it's not just about wildfire, we also have an item about seismic retrofits for unreinforced masonry buildings in this plan. Besides the grant funding eligibility, the other huge benefits to this plan are the inter-bureau communication that's been happening through this planning process, and opportunity to work with our partner bureaus. Some of the other bureaus we're working with, especially fire and environmental services, have some really great ideas about how to think a little differently about some of the things that might happen in the future. Climate change, how that might affect our planning for wildfires. So hearing really the way that they're thinking, we're really benefiting from that. And then also this plan includes a community engagement portion where the Bureau of Emergency Management is going to be reaching out to what they call frontline communities, the communities in our city that are most likely to be impacted by hazard events, and making sure that the city has a good understanding of what the folks living in those areas, really their top concerns are. So with regard to wildfire, that would be people living in the wildland urban interface. This plan is ongoing right now. The community engagement process is just kicking off and it's scheduled to be wrapped up in the spring. So we're kind of still in the middle of it. Kendra, if you could go to the next slide, please. I will talk about the other planning effort that's going on right now. It is a Multnomah County effort, and it's an update to the Multnomah County Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This plan was first adopted in 2011, and this is an update to that. This plan also meets eligibility requirements for FEMA grant programs, so it's important with that regard. It's a countywide plan, and this one's specific to wildfire. So similar to the mitigation action plan, it includes a list of projects that could be eligible for grant funding. But since it's only about wildfire, we have an opportunity to put more specific projects on the list. And the way the existing plan is organized, it includes a project list for each fire department in the county. I see it's 11 o'clock and I promise I'll talk for like 1 more minute. But because of the way that's organized so that we have a list specific to the Fire Bureau, we've had an opportunity to really strengthen our partnership with the Fire Bureau and really continue making those connections, building on the connections that Kendra and her colleagues in City Nature were already making with the Fire Bureau. So in the month of October, we have a whole series of meetings dedicated just to coordination between the city bureaus, and particularly our bureau and the Fire Bureau. And we've already been brainstorming a little bit with fire. We have a whole bunch of ideas, and we're going to be working with them to refine those into ideas that can go into the plan, and ideas that maybe don't fit into the plan, but that maybe we can work between our two bureaus to still make improvements and move those things forward. And one of the key items that I think is going to be on the plan that I just wanted to share with you, because I think there's a lot of excitement about it, is convening a standing wildfire technical committee. One of the great things about this planning effort has been the improvement in our communication with the Oregon Department of Forestry, with the county fire, with our partner bureau here, Fire and Rescue. And so a wildfire technical committee would probably include all of those entities, as well as emergency management, the Water Bureau, Planning and Sustainability, and Metro, and Multnomah County Emergency Management. And that will give us an opportunity to keep that great communication going, especially as things move so fast. Climate change impacts are changing all the time. thinking around how we can prepare for these kinds of events is changing all the time. So just keep that strong communication going so that we can continue to learn from each other and continue to adapt as we go forward. This plan is also scheduled to wrap up in the spring of 2022. So that process is still ongoing. And that's what I have for you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. But that is what I have for an update. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kendra. Sorry, we are going to have people who have to jump off probably. At this point, if people have questions for Kendra or Laura, I don't know if you have time to stick around. If you do, I understand that people do need to jump off though. And if anyone has anything for future agenda items to send me, and Casey, please do. And to the members of the public, I think I sent you the information for the public comment procedure to follow if you would like to be time on a future agenda. We do request that those public comment forms be returned a week in advance if possible, and we always reserve time at the start of every meeting for public comment. So with that, if Laura and Kendra, you do have time to stick around for questions, if people have specific questions, that would be terrific. But if people do need to jump off, we totally understand. But thank you for the presentation, Kendra and Laura.
Of course, yeah. And I have a few minutes if anyone has questions. I'm trying to check on the chat and see who's saying goodbye or.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just saying they have to jump off.
Okay, fair enough.
Really great presentation, Kendra and Laura, appreciate it. And the work is just so important. You know, I feel like we're a little bit late to the game, but man, are we going full throttle now. So really good stuff. I just asked for a full briefing on the mitigation of the map. So I'm sure Lauren will be in touch with you, Laura, to set that up. So great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you responding to our request. As you know, this came out as a request probably a couple months ago when we had those really severe heat days. But you know, the issue has, as you noted, has come up a couple times during the summer with respect to some human activities as well. So we're really glad that you stuck with us and were available to give us the summary of what's been going on. So thank you.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
With that, I think we've lost just about all the board members. So if anybody does have anything else, let's go ahead and shoot an email to me and Casey, and we will see you next month, if not at a working group meeting before then. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.